A report by the central bank has stated that it has failed to curb the rising inflation in the country. Despite earlier projection to limit the inflation rate to 7%, the report has shown that the inflation crossed the 7.6% mark. The only positive in the report is that the country has managed to boost its foreign exchange reserve due to the policy of minimizing import adopted by the central bank. Good evening, I'm Amar Singh Pradhan, and these are the headlines of the hour. Investigations into Lalita Niwas land scam into final stage. Preparations on the way to acquit former Prime Ministers Madhav Kumar Nepal and Baburam Bhattrai. The government fails to crack the issue of landless squatters. Kathmandu Metropolis even fails to collect their data. The shelter house in Ichangunaran rendered useless. The central bank fails to control rising inflation last fiscal year. Foreign exchange reserve climbs by 26.6% amid lowered import. FIFA Women's World Cup to get a new champion, first-time finalist England and Spain on the verge of writing history. The Central Investigation Bureau of Nepal Police has reached the final phase of its investigation into the Lalita Niwas land scam. The CIB had reopened the investigation as District Attorney's Office refused to move ahead with the case 2 years ago. In the span of almost 2 months, CIB nabbed 23 individuals alleged of involvement in the scam, including Min Bahadur Gurung, the operator of popular supermarket chain Phat Pateni. 5 of the arrested received bail during this period, while the CIB still struggles to arrest political leaders who have been alleged of involvement despite the Supreme Court's clearance on keeping in judicial custody anyone at the decision-making level during the illegal transaction of the Lalita Niwas land. CIB has shown leniency in case of political leaders as it has refrained from arresting former Prime Minister duo Madhav Kumar Nepal and Baburam Bhattrai and former Minister Bijay Kumar Gachadar. The Bureau is to submit its report along with recommendations to the Government Attorney's Office on Sunday. However, it is yet to finalize the list of defendants. Government Attorney's Office is required to file a case by 29th of August this month based on the report by CIB. Kathmandu Metropolis, despite being the federal capital, is fast turning into a concrete jungle with haphazard urbanization. The landless squatters residing by the riverside of Kathmandu Valley poses as the biggest challenge in the metropolis's drive for a well-managed capital city. To make matters worse, the metropolis even lacks categorical data on the number of landless squatters living in the Kathmandu Valley. Efforts have been made in the past to deal with the issue of the landless squatters. It was in the year 2012 that the government, led by Prime Minister Baburam Bhattrai, had tried to manage the issue of landless squatters. However, the plans in the face of massive politicization did not materialize. Kathmandu Mayor Balin Shah last year also attempted to evict the landless squatters. However, due to the lack of support from the federal government and the aggressive protest by the squatters, foiled Mayor Balin's plans. Kathmandu Metropolis last year had also struck an agreement with the National Land Commission in August last year to settle the issue of landless squatters from Bagmati, Bisnumati and Manohara rivers. As per the agreement, the Commission had issued a public notice directing all landless squatters to get themselves registered. However, the Election Commission, citing the Election Code of Conduct, ordered to stop data collection works. After the election was over, a team from the metropolis tried to forcibly vacate the settlements on the river banks that was met with a stern protest. Meanwhile, Bagmati Civilization Development Committee has claimed that there are some 3,496 families living at the Bagmati corridor. In the meantime, a meeting between the federal government and the metropolis has also agreed to manage the genuine landless squatters and sending back the fake squatters to their home districts. However, a final decision on location to station the genuine landless squatters has not been reached, while the 5 concrete buildings made in the capital's Ichangunaran to accommodate the landless squatters remain unused. And in this context, in our Public Voice segment today, we have asked in several provinces what should be done to solve the issue of landless squatters. Let's take a look at what they have to say.
हामीलाई चाहिँ राज्यले चाहिँ कर लिएर लालपूर्जा दिए हुन्थ्यो र हामी सुख शान्तिसँग बस्न पाए हुन्थ्यो।
सुकुम्बासीहरू जस्तो गरिबहरू दुखीहरू छन् उनीहरूलाई चाहिँ लालपूर्जा दियो भने उनीहरूको मन खुसी हुन्छ।
वास्तविक सुकुम्बासीहरूलाई आयोग मार्फत समस्या समाधान गर्नुपर्ने हुन्छ।
सरकारले त हामीलाई त लालपूर्जा दिएर राम्रो गर्दै हुन्छ।
भूमिहीन व्यक्तिलाई यथाशीघ्र अहिले जग्गा उपलब्ध गराइदिनुपर्छ।
सरकारले हामीलाई अब कतिचोटि भइसक्यो नाप्नी ओर्नी यताउति गरेर गइरहनु भएको सकेसम्म हामीलाई लालपूर्जा छिट्टै आइदिए हुन्थ्यो।
वास्तविक सुकुम्बासीहरूलाई पूर्जा वितरण होस् र आफ्नो आसेपासे आफ्नो कार्यकर्ताहरूलाई वितरण नहोस्।
स्थानीय तहले चाहिँ सहजीकरण गर्न जरुरी छ।
वास्तविक सुकुम्बासी हो कि होइन र पहिचान गर्नुपर्यो वार्डले।
सानो घर बस्नको लागि चाहिँ व्यवस्था गर्नुपर्छ।
तिनै तहको सरकारले चाहिँ एकिङ डाटा निकाली अनि त्यसको उचित किसिमको व्यवस्थापन गरी सीमित एउटा कुनै क्षेत्र अथवा ठाउँमा उनीहरूको व्यवस्थापन गरेको भए यसको समाधान हुन्थ्यो।
जसको जग्गा धेरै छ त्यो जग्गालाई चाहिँ अतिक्रमण गरेर त्यही जग्गा चाहिँ दिँदाखेरि समस्या समाधान हुन्छ।
Chief Minister of Kosi Province Uddhav Thapa is facing a floor test on 21st of August coming Monday. Deputy Speaker of Kosi Province Srijana Danwar informed that the floor test would take place in the meeting of the Provincial Assembly at 1 p.m. on Monday. Chief Minister Thapa also informed the Assembly Secretariat regarding the preparations to take the confidence vote. Meanwhile, the first meeting of the Provincial Assembly since the formation of the new government was also held today. Earlier, the UML-led government under Chief Minister Hikmat Singh Karki had collapsed as Maoist Centre and Janta Samajwadi had withdrawn their support to the government. Following this, Chief Minister Karki had ended the House session and had introduced the budget through an ordinance. Welcome back. Nepal Rashtra Bank has failed to control inflation in the past fiscal year based on its own report that was released today. The central bank had aimed at limiting inflation at 7%, however, inflation reached 7.4%. The highest inflation was reported by transport, restaurant and hotel sector. Prices for food and drinks in restaurants and hotels last year climbed by 14.42% and transport fares by up to 13.5%. Loans disbursed to private sectors rose by 3.8%, while the central bank aimed at giving out loans of 12.6%. Liquidity crisis, high interest rates and economic stalemate have been attributed as the reasons behind the failure to meet the loan targets, which ultimately dented the overall economic growth of the country. Meanwhile, the central bank's report shows remittance increased by 21.2% last year, with the country receiving 1,220 billion rupees. A year ago, the remittance had recorded an increment of just 4.8%. The increase in remittance and decrease in imports by 16% had maintained the balance of payment at a surplus of 290 billion rupees. During the Nepalese month of Asar of 2079, balance of payment was set at deficit of 255 billion rupees. Likewise, the foreign currency reserve that was 1,215 billion 800 million rupees in the month of Asar in 2079 rose by 26.6% to reach 1,539 billion 360 million rupees by the month of Asar this year. As of end of the month this year, the central bank says state coffers had a deposit of 71 billion 980 million rupees. 12 commercial banks and 16 microfinances merged in the last fiscal year. And it's now time for our segment Public Pulse, where it texts us with their opinion.
Public Pulse.
And before we give you today's question, let's take a look at a response to yesterday's question. And yesterday we had asked you, why have local bodies continued to face the vacancy of chief administrative officers? 62% voted for option A, indifferent center, 27% voted for option B, unwilling employees, and 11% voted for option C, lackluster municipality. And here is today's question. And the question is, why has the government failed to control inflation? Our options are option A, feeble monitoring, option B, market out of control, and option C, dependency on import. The voting is on. Type in AWS, select your option A, B or C and send it to 34001 to share opinion with us. And up next is News in Nepali. Keep watching Kantipur Television SD. Good night.